Hey guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about building out a response paragraph. This video is going to be great if you need a quick refresher on how to write a response paragraph, if you just want to review the steps you need to take to write a response paragraph, or if you're looking for someone to walk you through the process step by step. Let's get started. Let's start by reviewing what a response paragraph actually is. It's a short piece of analytical writing, just one paragraph, that's going to focus on the language of one particular moment in a text. In focusing on just one moment, the response paragraph analyzes one language choice that an author is making, and you're going to prove the elemental effect of that language choice. Remember that when we talk about language choices, we're talking about techniques and devices, right? So those small, granular decisions that our authors are making. And when we talk about elemental effect, we're discussing those mid-level, mid-range elements like characterization, plot, mood, setting, all that sort of thing. So just remember, the response paragraph is living in the bottom part of this pyramid, right? It's thinking, how does language impact the elements of a work? Response paragraphs are always tightly focused on one particular moment of a text. All right, so that's what a response paragraph is, that's what it's doing. How does it do those things? Well, we need to remember that the response paragraph has a 5-part structure: a topic sentence, context and build, evidence through quotations, explanation and analysis of that evidence, and then some connection and conclusion to a larger point. So go ahead and remember for a moment that with the topic sentence, we have one single sentence that incorporates 3 different components: the title of the text we're discussing and the author of the text, the mechanical or technical feature, so this is your language or literary technique or device, and then the elemental effect. All right, so let's take a second and pause. We're going to practice applying our understanding of topic sentences by looking at 3 different structures. In doing this, I'm going to ask you to actually practice writing a topic sentence yourself in 3 different ways. So let's take a look at response paragraph topic sentence structure A. All right. Let's look at the sample first. In author's title of text, literary technique or device, verb, elemental effect. This is like a super wacky Mad Lib. What does this even mean? How do I use this? Well, let's take a look at how this particular structure or skeleton for a topic sentence can be used in actual analysis. Take a look at model number 1. In Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, verdant imagery establishes the setting as positive, welcoming, and full of life. Pause this video and see if you can identify the author, the title of text, the literary technique or device, the verb that's being used, and the elemental effect. Let's review. In Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, verdant imagery establishes the setting as positive, welcoming, and full of life. Now take a look at model number 2. In William Golding's Lord of the Flies, the violent diction associated with Jack establishes him as a volatile character. Take a second, see if you can pick this one apart. And here's a hint, it's going to have the same structure. Hopefully you got something similar. Now, something I want to draw your attention to is that both of these topic sentences are nice and specific, and this is important. Everything I've circled further specifies the argument that's being made in the topic sentence. So while in Model 1, we know we're talking about imagery impacting setting, the student has gotten a lot more specific and pointed out what kind of imagery and how it's impacting the setting. Similarly, in model number 2, we know that we're talking about a pattern of diction and characterization. But we get to learn more specifically that the student is making an argument about violent diction that's associated with a particular character and how that violent diction associated with that character makes them seem particularly volatile. Take a quick second and look at your own ideas. Try writing a topic sentence using structure A. After you've done that, press play again. All right, structure B. So this is the second way that we can format or structure our topic sentences. In title of text, author uses literary technique or device to verb elemental effect. Here we have 2 more models. Take a second looking at structure B and see if you can identify the component parts of each topic sentence. If you got something like this, good job. I want to draw your attention to something in these 2 topic sentences. First of all, we have a great deal of specificity here. So everything that's underlined is nice, specific language, right? Now, the other thing I want to point out is that in model number 1, our student, while being specific about what's happening with Montag, could have been more clear. Are they talking about characterization or are they talking about internal conflict? An argument for both could be made out of model number 1. In model number 2, I want to draw your attention to the fact that the word characterized is being used both as the verb of the sentence and as something that's illustrative of the element that's being addressed. Now, you've tried writing with structure A. Try writing with structure B. Keep the same information in your topic sentence, but rearrange it. Try reorganizing your ideas. When you've done that, go ahead and click play again. All right, here's a third structure for a topic sentence, structure C. Structure C can get a little long and a little wordy, so that's something you're going to want to watch out for when using this particular topic sentence structure. Let's take a look. Through literary technique or device, author verb elemental effect in title of text. Now, that seems a little funky, right? Let's apply it. Take a minute and see if you can apply this particular structure to model number 1. Nice work. You'll notice that here we're talking about narrative language and how it impacts a character's relationship or multiple character relationships with setting. This is a pretty complicated topic sentence, and yeah, it's a little wordy, but it is pretty specific. Take a second now. Try rewriting your topic sentence using structure C. And when you think you've done it, go ahead and hit play again. All right, if you're working with a writing group or you're working with a friend, go ahead and take your 3 sample topic sentences to that group. If you're not working with a group, you can do this independently. Choose the best topic sentence. They're all going to make pretty much the same argument. So what you're looking for is clarity and for the sentence that is the least wordy. Once you've figured that out, you have a topic sentence. Congratulations. Now that you have that topic sentence, it's time to move on to the context and build and the quotation. I'm going to address both of these parts in this next section. Just a reminder that the context and build is generally going to be 1 to 2 sentences long, and it's doing exactly what it sounds like, providing context for your argument and building into the evidence that you're going to offer. When you provide your evidence, you're going to do it by using quotations from the text that you're dealing with, right? And there are 2 important things to think about with regard to the evidence you choose. First, it absolutely must demonstrate the language that you're going to analyze in the rest of the paragraph. Otherwise, what's the point of including quotations to begin with? The other thing is that you definitely want your quotation to align with your topic sentence. What do I mean by this? If your topic sentence says, you plan to address a simile or to analyze a simile, you best bet that your evidence, your quotation, actually includes a simile in it. If instead you're going to be looking at a pattern of aggressive diction, you want to make sure that the quotations you provide actually establish a pattern of aggressive diction. The other thing to note about your quotations is that they do need to be integrated. Well, what does that mean? Integrating a sentence into the body of your paragraph means that you're including it in a sentence of your own, right? We don't want these quotations just floating around in your paragraph untethered to your ideas. The whole point is that you're proving what you think. So you want to attach your quotation to some of your language, and there are a couple of different ways you can do this. There's an example on the board right now. What I'd like you to do is find your quotation. We're going to go through 3 of the most basic quotation integration methods. This task is sometimes called quotation blending. Regardless of what you want to call it, right, you may find that there are many other ways to put a quotation effectively into your writing. And that's true. There are lots of different ways to do it. These are just the 3 most basic. All right, let's start with a dialogue tag. A dialogue tag is essentially setting up your quotation, whether it's narrative language or actual dialogue from a character. You're setting up your quotation as if it were dialogue in a novel. Check it out. You'll write your sentence until he or she says, here's the quotation, and then you'll provide your parenthetical citation. Here, I've put the student language in blue, the quotation in yellow, and the parenthetical citation in red. Pause it for a second and see if you can identify these components in the models below. Did you get something like this? If so, you're crushing it. Keep in mind that the way you write or structure your dialogue tag may vary depending on the kinds of sentences that come before it. Pause the video now and try writing a sentence that integrates your quotation using a dialogue tag. And when you're finished, press play again. All right, let's try another quotation integration method. This method is going to ask you to treat the quotation as if it were like your own words in a sentence. So take a look at the sample. Write your sentence so that the blended quotation sounds completely natural. And don't forget your parenthetical citation. Once again, I have the student language in blue, the quotation in yellow, and the parenthetical in red. Pause the video now and see if you can identify those components in models 1 and 2. If you have something like what I've got on the board now, good job. Now, I want to draw your attention to something. Model number 1 is doing something different than model number 2. Model number 1 actually allows the student to interject some explanation and analysis into the quotation integration. So the bits that I've underlined are actually doing some analytical heavy lifting, which is kind of awesome. The student is making their language go farther. In model number 2, the student isn't really doing any analysis. Instead, the student is pulling from 2 different sentences, right? Look at the stuff that's in yellow. That language is pulled from either 2 different sentences or 2 very different parts of a longer sentence. This allows the student to focus in only on the language they need to analyze. It allows them to cut out all the extra language that they don't need. This allows them to be more focused in their writing process. All right, really quickly, a hot tip. You want to kind of always be like student number 2, in that you always only want to use the few words from the quotation that you like, the ones that are most worthy of discussion and analysis. Both student 1 and student 2 do this. They're focusing solely on the language they need to prove their argument. Go ahead and pause the video now. Try integrating a quotation as if it were part of your own words in your sentence. And when you think you've done it, go ahead and press play. All right, our third integration technique is using a full sentence and a colon. And the colon is actually pretty important here. So let's take a look at the initial model. You'll give a full sentence introduction, and then you'll use a full sentence of your quotation. You could also just use a phrase of your quotation. And once again, we are looking at that parenthetical citation. This integration method is really handy because it allows you to do some of that analytical heavy lifting like model number 1 on the previous slide. Check it out. In both model number 1 and model number 2, we have a full sentence that could totally stand on its own before each quotation, and the quotations are always being set off by colons. What you might notice is that each of the introductory sentences in blue are really providing explanation and analysis. So this is the student being concise and economical with their language, right? One more hot tip before you try doing this on your own. The sentence that comes before the colon should draw attention to something specific in the quotation, right? So not only are we celebrating model number 1 and number 2 for doing that analytical work in their sentence, it's also really important that you do that. Otherwise, you're wasting the energy that is used in making a full sentence integration happen. Take a quick second, pause the video, and try using a full sentence introduction to integrate your quotation. And when you think you've got it, go ahead and press play. All right, 2 more things about quotation integration. Sometimes there are moments where we don't want to use a full sentence or even a full 2 sentences. We just want little pieces of it. When that happens, we want to use something called the ellipsis, right? The ellipsis is just another name for the ... that we so often use in text messages when we want to trail off or we're not sure what to say. If you use an ellipsis to take information or language out of a quotation, you want to make sure that you use something called brackets. I've circled them on the page in front of you. Using brackets indicates that you, as the writer of the paragraph, have made a change or alteration to the original language of the quotation. We only want to do this when we absolutely have to. It's always best to leave the author's original language intact. We might also use brackets when we need to make a clarification. If you look in the example on the board, you'll see that the student needed to make a slight alteration to the grammar of the sentence in order to make sure that the original meaning of the quotation is kept intact. So occasionally you might need to change the tense of a word, or you might need to provide more clarification grammatically for a sentence to make sense. And in that case, once again, you want to use those brackets to indicate that you have made a change to the author's intended language. All right, if you're working with a writing group or whether you're writing by yourself, go ahead and take a second and answer these questions. Look at your quotation. Does it have the device that you've mentioned in your topic sentence? Which mode of integration is working best for your particular quotation? Are the build and context that you've written enough? Are they relevant? All right. The last two sections of the response paragraph are explanation analysis and connection and conclusion. I'm not going to walk you through writing these necessarily because this is where the bulk of the work comes in, and every single explanation and analysis is going to be unique to the individual who is writing the explanation and analysis. Every argument is going to be different, and every student's going to have a different way of proving that argument. What I will do is just kind of walk you through very briefly the tasks that you need to accomplish in order to do these parts well. So, keep in mind that the explanation and analysis is going to demonstrate and explain how the quotation is an actual example of the literary technique or device that you identified in the topic sentence. So for example, if we're addressing a simile, right? This section of the paragraph is going to say, hey, this is a simile. This is how we know this, right? I'm going to prove the fact that it's a simile. Additionally, this section is going to analyze the language and link it to the larger element you're trying to make an argument about. So if you're writing about characterization, this is where you'll say, this simile directly or indirectly characterizes this person in this way. This is also the section of the paragraph where you're going to want to do a deep dive into connotation and denotation of language, right? Think about the different associations that words have. What does it mean that someone's being compared to the sun or to a frigid tundra, right? What do the comparisons mean? This is where you really read in between the lines and identify the subtext of the language that the author is using. Finally, the connection and the conclusion. You want to make sure that your connection and conclusion sentence is always connecting back to the topic sentence. Everything should always be coming back to the topic sentence. All sentences in your paragraph should flow from the topic sentence. And in a circular sort of way, all of those sentences should also lead back to the topic sentence. That's how a response paragraph becomes a nice, tight, 1-2 punch of analytical thinking when it comes to reading a text. Additionally, you want your connection and conclusion sentence to offer an extension or an observation about the consequence of the idea you've proven. Often teachers will represent this as, so what, or why does this matter? This can be a really difficult idea to arrive at and to come up with, and that's okay. Keep in mind that this kind of struggle is how we grow. So go ahead and take a second, write through the explanation and analysis, and try writing a connection and conclusion. And when you think you've got it, go ahead and hit play. All right, so whether you're writing with a group or on your own, now's the time to take your explanation and analysis and connection and conclusion and analyze how you've done. So, did you explain the device or establish the pattern that you talk about in your topic sentence and that you hopefully have in your quotation? Did you analyze the specific language of the quotation, really digging into the nuance? Did you connect that language back to the element that you mentioned in your topic sentence? That's really important because that's how you're going to prove your argument. Then you have to ask, did you link your argument back to the topic sentence? And did you extend your thinking, addressing why your idea matters? Answering that so what question. All right, so if you've done all of that, you're well on your way to having a pretty awesome response paragraph. There are only a few notes I want to offer you about the actual writing of the response paragraph. These fall into the category of stylistic concerns. So there's really just 4 things to consider. I'm going to ask you to write in the academic present tense. Why? It's simply a convention of the academic discipline of literature. So please, use present tense verbs. Avoid contractions. It's not that they're wrong, it's that they're a little casual. For formal analytical writing like this, we want to avoid can't and instead write cannot. And then finally, this is something you should be familiar with by now. No self-referential pronouns like I, me, my. And you want to avoid having references to the reader, right? The fact that the reader is involved is implicit, and you don't need to mention the reader. Furthermore, it strengthens your argument if you don't. All right, you have done a great job. I'm super proud of you. You have a little bit more to do with your response paragraph. You probably want to go back and revise a couple of times, give it a good proofread. and maybe read it out loud or have somebody read it out loud to you. You probably have some more revision to do. Please know that no matter what, you've got this.